What's up, everybody? Zach Shelley here with Management Unfiltered, and I've got
Kirk Teachout. And today we're going to be talking about something that's a hot topic. I know I've dealt with it. I know Zach's dealt with it as well. So it's something that it has been on our minds for sure in the last few years, and it's on a lot of your minds as well as leaders, as office managers, as practice owners. It's the topic of burnout and how we get to burnout, what I've seen of how people get to burnout, and then how can we get out of burnout, and we're just going to cut it short and just say you need to quit. So that was a great episode, and we're going to move on to the next episode.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah. But Zach, I had this quote. So shameless plug, if you follow me on Instagram at Kirk Teachout, you're going to find way more tips and tricks. But every single week on Monday, I have a quote. And this week's quote was very in line with this thing that we're going to be talking about today with burnout. But it said, if the environment opposes what you're trying to really be or really have, eventually the environment will always win. And I took the stance of, the importance of nurturing our culture, right? Because we know that team management is the hardest part of being in a practice. And a lot of times, I know I've seen it from my wife as well, that is what causes her burnout, is the constant dumpster fires of managing the team. Now, Zach, I know you have some other thoughts on that as well, but before we get into your particulars, how have you seen things lead up to burnout in that kind of space, right? In that lens of, okay, the importance of nurturing a team and why it leads to burnout.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing to first understand is let's talk about a literal burnout in a car, right? And I know it sounds kind of funny, but let's talk about that because that's where my brain goes as a guy. We're talking about burnouts. That sounds awesome. You rev that motor up, you dump the clutch, and it puts full power to the wheels to where there's no traction. It's just straight power. And quite honestly, as I was thinking about that when you're talking, Kirk, I was like, that's what we do. We go full bore. We dump the clutch, we rev the engine, and we just push. And when you're talking about nurturing a team, all we're worried about is how do we nurture that team? How do we nurture the team? How do we get that person to the next level? But we don't ever step back and say, okay, one, is this healthy for the practice? Two, is it healthy for me? There's a lot of times that we don't even look on the other lens of okay, yeah, well, I'm doing what's best for the practice, so it's okay. But not at the sacrifice of you, because what ends up happening as the owner doc or the office manager is things start to slip. And when things start to slip, that's when you start seeing that chaos ensue. And then before you know it, you're actually past the point of burnout. You're actually getting to the point where there's resentment, there's anger, there's frustration, and you don't even remember why you're doing what you do or appreciating why you do what you do or what you're doing or why you're nurturing these team members. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is you push people out the door and they quit rather than you quitting. And we end the episode in 30 seconds. They quit. And then you're finding new team members. But what happens is we don't ever address the initial section of what's causing that burnout. So then it just becomes reciprocal.
Yeah. And what is that source of burnout?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, it's yourself.
Yeah, it's me all the time.
Yeah.
I thought you were asking me a trick question, so you really had me thinking for a second.
But I made you second guess yourself.
But it is us. We're always we are the number one person that always gets in the way of ourselves.
Yeah.
All the time, we're causing the problems because we don't take a second to just step back and look at the bigger picture and say, where am I at? Am I actually good where I'm at? Do I feel like we're making progress where we're going, or am I just dumping energy into something that's making me sacrifice in many other areas? And quite honestly, that happens too often, and I don't want to say too late, but there's so much collateral damage at that point that there's a lot that can't be repaired, and then you have to rebuild.
Yeah, and that is where a lot of people kind of get stuck, right? It's the between a rock and a hard place of oh man, I need help, but I also realize, most of us know what it's going to take to get to where we need to be. It's just like, do I want to do that? And it's hard because a lot of times, you're just like, okay, I know how hard it's going to be to rebuild this team, and I know that it's on me. And I don't want to do that. But I think that burnout has really, I mean, it's turned into a buzzword, right? I feel like, because people are just like, oh, this is a tough time, I'm burning out. I'm like, no, not necessarily. But I would advise reaching out to somebody when you even feel like you're getting close, and or before. Be proactive. Like, we are so good at preaching to our patients about being proactive, and yet we're not proactive ourselves.
With dentistry for ourselves, and with ourselves, period, of not talking or
When was the
getting
last
help.
time you had a cleaning, Zach?
It's been like 9 months.
That is terrible. That is
It is.
absolutely
It
horrible. I think it's been
is.
7 for me. So I'm
Oh, way to
closer.
make yourself look better. Hey, but what I have on you is my wife is not a dentist, Kirk.
Hey, that doesn't mean anything. If anything, that means I don't get a spot freely.
That's true. That is true.
But still, I think burnout, from what I've seen with my wife and others, is that it comes down to man, you're constantly having to put out dumpster fires, right? And but if you can come to the realization that there will always be dumpster fires, and what I mean by that is, like, there are things that are not urgent and not important that are still on fire, maybe, that it's okay to let it burn for a little while you prioritize the thing you need to.
Yeah, so one of our team members, not to cut you off, but it enlightened me a while back. We lost a front desk or front office member, and you're laughing because I corrected myself, but we lost one of our team members. She was alone. She was kind of freaking out, overthinking it a bit, and her husband, who's in the military, was like, "Hey, find everything that's glass and make sure that doesn't break, because glass hits the ground, it breaks. The things that are rubber will bounce back. They can sit for a minute." And I was like, dude, I'm stealing that from you. And he's like, use it all day long. So we need to find the things that are in the practice that are glass, because there are things that are glass and that can't shatter. And then find the things that are rubber. They will bounce back. They may burn for a minute, like we say. But I think one of the biggest things, as you were talking, Kirk, I had a realization, because I experienced a little, just because I'm big on doing things right, and I want to affect to the practice positive as fast as possible. I want to make as much positive change. And coming in as a new manager of the practice, 5 years ago, there's a lot of goals, a lot of things we want to do, and you push, and you have all these things that you're floating, and it's like you end up holding 8 pieces of glass that you can't balance. So something physically, it just has to break because you can't do it. So owner docs, I strongly encourage you, and office managers, I strongly encourage you also. Now when I teach people and we talk about changing the practice, I say choose one thing and master it first. Do not overwhelm yourself intentionally, because a lot of times we're like, oh, I can do it all. Like, I've got this. Yeah, you might be able to do it, but you can't do it effectively. I'm guilty of that all day long. I did that for so many years. And it took me a long time to realize, like, hey, I can't do it all at once, and I don't need to hold 8 glass plates, balancing one on my head, one on my each foot, one in each hand, and wherever you want the other 3 to fall, they're going to fall. It's not fun, and it's not necessary, and we can do it a lot more intentionally. So sometimes we force ourselves into burnout because we take on too much. And then in that point, we're trying to keep the culture where it needs to be to keep everybody happy, that we lose sight of all of it. So that, I feel, Kirk, is one of our big proponents of, like, we always talk about growth, but we don't look at the repercussions of doing it one way versus the other.
For sure. And if you do focus, like, let's look at those 2 different ways, right? So if we're doing everything all at the same time and trying to master it all at the same time, you're going to have slower growth over time, and you may not even get to where you want, because you're not really building a solid foundation of mastering those specific tools. Whereas if we really focus on one block at a time of the foundation, right, we're going to get it perfect or close to perfect, right? then the growth at that point, block after block after block after skill after skill after skill, it's going to grow exponentially because we have a much better foundation built. And yes, it's sloggy at the very beginning. It's so slow and it's annoying, it's frustrating, and it's tough. But if you can do that and get through that process, you're going to be way better off on the back end. And I know we had talked about before this episode, actually, before we got on here, because we do talk, before we start these things, of what kind of you talked about too. And I have a similar analogy of what you're going to be talking about after you talk about it. So start about what you were talking about before and then talk about it now.
Okay. So we're going back to the future is what Kirk is saying. I'm Marty
Yes.
McFly and he's Doc now. Hey, listen, Marty McFly skateboarded and he was also a rock star. So
Amen.
There's that. We should get a logo, a Back to the Future style logo for the podcast. That would be awesome.
That would be sick. That would be sick.
All right. We're going to talk to our production team. We're going to work on that, especially with our new intro and outro. So that's a squirrel moment. That's my ADHD, guys. Look out for some awesome logos to come through. So what I was talking about with Kirk earlier was the quote of, you can't pour from an empty cup, but burnout is what happens when you keep trying. So you just got that cup that you're just continually emptying, but there's nothing there to empty. And that's where you have the lack of ability to even acknowledge or know that you're to that point of burnout. Sometimes we are unwilling to accept that because we see that as failure. And like, there's so many people, it's like, I refuse to fail. Like I'm I'm the gladiator. Like I'm going to win no matter what. And it's like, at what cost? Right. And I'm truly talking about like, it's not just your practice family. It's like your family at home. Like there is a cost for this, and you have to learn when to kind of throw in the towel at some point with this and either delegate or say, hey, I need some space from this, and this project's going to have to wait.
Yeah. And there's a great book by Seth Godin called The Dip. And it's very short. It's a great book, and it talks about how really successful people are strategic quitters, right? I loved it. I was like, oh, this is so good, right? Because we're always, like you were saying, like, growth, and like, yes, we got to be successful. But the greatest people are the ones that say no. And your greatest asset as a practice owner and leader is the ability to say no and walk away. It takes a lot of being humble. You got to swallow your pride a lot of times in doing that sometimes, because maybe you made the wrong decision in doing something. But if you can say no and walk away and strategically quit things that are not going to get you to your goal, then it's okay. And honestly, a lot of times that will relieve a lot of that burnout, because like, hey, we shouldn't be doing this anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to learn how to be a strategic quitter. I like that.
Me too. It's great. It's a great book. The Dip by Seth Godin. It's a very short read. It's a great book. But another analogy, that I want to piggyback off of that one about, pouring from an empty pitcher or an empty cup is, what do they always say when we're flying, right? They always say when the oxygen masks come down, they don't say, put it on somebody else first and then put it on yourself. No, you put it on yourself first, save yourself so you can help others. They're going to be okay to suffocate for just a little while, okay? So you can get them back to life if you can now first save yourself. And that poses another idea of when you're trying to figure out what to invest in your practice on what's going to move the needle the most, you need to look inwardly first. Your greatest investment is in yourself. And so if you have all these dumpster fires, it's typically a lack of leadership, which we've touched on a lot, right? And leadership and systems, right? Because the most successful practices out there are driven by strong leaders. And we say that, but it's like, what does that mean, right? It just means you can effectively get people to do their jobs well and be able to delegate and prioritize all these things that we're talking about that lead to burnout. Do they do it perfectly? No. They allow dumpster fires to burn. which leads me into some things that, okay, we've been talking about burnout, but what do we need to do to stop the burnout or get out of burnout? So I I made a post yesterday actually about this. It says the 6 days. I'm just going to tell myself. It says the 6 days to reset your burnout, but it was only 4 days of stuff.
So you just repeat day 1 and 2.
Yes, so repeat day 1 and 2. But day 1 is cancel a non-essential task. So get rid of something that's on your checklist of things to do that doesn't matter, right? I sometimes when people are in their head, I have them write down the 4 quadrants, right? Of urgent, not urgent, important, not important, right? Is it urgent? Maybe. Okay. Something going on, but is it important? No. Okay, cool. So we don't need to do this right now, right? If it's not urgent and not important, it really doesn't need to be at the top of the list. But if it's urgent and important, then we need to address it quickly, right? So go through your task list, get rid of one non-essential task to clear up your mental clutter. Day 2 is delegate one thing you dread. Another exercise I have people do is write down everything you do during the day and put a star next to everything that it just sucks the life force out of you, right? And if it doesn't require your license as a doctor or a provider, you better get rid of it because it's going to continue to suck the life force out of you. You need to delegate it. And then day 3, block 1 hour of non-interrupted time. I mean, like, turn off your notifications, put your phone on airplane mode, and just focus. I know Alex Hormozy, he puts headphones on or he puts earplugs in and like he just focuses. I personally like having a Netflix show going at the same time I'm doing something. And I am super productive that way. But I have to sit down and block off an hour of something to do to work on the business, not in the business.
Yes.
Right? And then day 4 is just simply get rid of a meeting. I was in a meeting last week. Somebody set a meeting with me last week. And I was like, that could have been an email. That, for all of those, we harp on meetings in a practice. It's super important. Like, morning huddle is not something you need to get rid of. Okay. Monthly meeting, not something you need to get rid of. However, there may be a meeting that you're doing ever so often that maybe you shouldn't do. Like, maybe it's just something that you just need to write a note on and give it to somebody, right? There's no reason to have a meeting. A lot of times meetings, again, suck the life force out of not only you, but it sucks the life force out of your team.
We should make a sticker for the podcast with a vacuum that says life force and it's sucking the office manager into it.
We're just coming up with merch ideas this podcast. This episode.
Great merch ideas. That's the whole goal.
So no, but still, like in like Zach said, day 5 and 6, go back to day 1 and 2. But still, yet there are certain things. Just try to sit down one day at a time and look at one thing. Another trick that I use in nurturing your culture is figure out how many team members you have. For some, it's not a lot. So for instance, I have a client that has 5 team members. Great. For your old practice, Zach, it's weird saying your old practice, but your previous practice, right, had 40-ish people at all times, right? So that's a tough one. I don't suggest doing it when you have a large team, but when you have a smaller team, especially, put that amount of paper clips in your left pocket. And then throughout the day, give one encouragement or a hurrah or whatever to, like, man, I loved how you scheduled that in the front. Like, that was great. I loved how you handed me that handpiece without me asking. I love, just encourage your team. And every time you encourage your team members, you move that paper clip to the other pocket. So by the end of the day, you have at least touched or had a touch point. Sorry, words. Had a touch point with each of your team members. Okay.
Don't touch each of your team members.
Yes.
We'll go into sexual harassment episodes later.
Yes, don't do that. Words, touch points. Have touch points, okay, with your team. And if you can do that every single day, it's very small, but over time, that's a massive difference. And you will see a huge turnaround in your culture with your team.
Going back to your 6 days, as much as I joke about saying go back to day, like repeat day 1 and 2, like that's the whole point of doing these things, is to have a habit and a behavior and a pattern of doing this. So as much as I joke about 6 days, but there's 4 days of points, like the next days, it can be a 28-day plan with the same 4 points that you keep reciprocating every week. And maybe you don't let go of something one of the days. And then there you have 5 days. And then on the 6th day, you repeat and you start going back through. But what we're trying to tell you is get into a pattern, a healthy pattern of this, to where this becomes your norm.
For sure. For sure. Well, guys, as usual, I end these episodes. So it's been a great time. We have great merch ideas. We've talked about burnout. We've talked about some ways that you can alleviate your burnout. If you need help, reach out to me or Zach, me at Kirk Teachout on Instagram, and Domlin on Facebook in the group. There it is in the background if you're on YouTube's. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the YouTubes, give us some comments, leave a 5-star review for the Unfiltered channel. Let us know what you want to hear, so we can get in here and talk about truly what you want, not just what me and Zach are just kind of talking about in the background. But let us know. Zach, what other comments do you have?
Don't be afraid to speak up. I've got a big community. Kirk's got a great following. Like, we're here, we're open, we're willing to talk to you too. Don't be afraid to speak up. Have a great week. We look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.
See you.
Come on, give me some.